Hey guys, it's Chris. From leaders of the world to people who desire to be protected at all costs, join me as I show you 8 of the most guarded people on Earth. Number 8. President Donald Trump. There are many leaders of the world that are protected, but few are as protected as the President of the United States. In the case of the current POTUS, that would be President Donald Trump, which is appropriate because right now Donald Trump is one of the most loved and hated figures in the world. That means that he needs the most protection in order to keep him safe from those that would try to do him harm. When Donald and Melania Trump went to the UK last year, they had 1,000 staff, a motorcade, and multiple helicopters for the trip. Many of these protection plans are secret, but we do know they're very expensive. He has Air Force One with 2 backups, 22 armored SUVs and vans, and of course, the presidential limo, nicknamed the Beast. The biggest and best place to keep him safe, without a doubt, is his home in the White House. The White House has now housed 45 different presidents, and through the centuries of its existence, it's grown and evolved into one of the safest buildings on the planet, which again makes sense, as it houses one of the most important people in the world. If it weren't safe, it would need to be either fortified or a new home base for the president would need to be made. Let's start with the outside perimeter in terms of security. Any pictures or photos you've seen of the White House show a gate just outside it. That gate is able to take the force of a vehicle crashing into it. There are guards and Secret Servicemen on the grounds if you're stupid enough to try and get over the gate and make a break for the front door. There are around 3,200 special agents and around 1,300 uniformed officers who guard the White House, the Treasury, and the foreign diplomatic missions in Washington. So what options are left? How about poisoning his food? You wouldn't even make it to his table. Why? Well, because all the food that's brought into the White House is scanned and tested for poison. And that's all done off-site to ensure that nothing untoward gets inside the building. Not to mention the president has his own personal chef that has been background checked and proven. But let's say you get past those hurdles and get into the building. Sometimes the president picks a meal to eat for that night, so unless you know exactly what he's going to eat at a certain time, the poison likely won't make it to his lips. So perhaps then an air attack would work. That's a no-go too. The White House has a personal radar system that can detect if anything gets too close to it, and the airspace above the White House is restricted, so flying over it is actually a crime. And even if you made it into the White House itself, there's actually a secret area for the president to go in case there's a breach, and you'll never get to it. Of course, you could make the case that outside the White House he's vulnerable, and that's true. Many presidents have been assassinated outside of the White House, like Abe Lincoln and John F. Kennedy. However, since those times, the president has been kept even more safe with the Secret Service, other bodyguards, full sweeps of areas, and more. No president has been assassinated since JFK. And as long as the Secret Service and others do their job, President Trump won't be added to that list. NBC News says that the current price tag for all of this security is $5 billion a year. Number 7. Kim Jong Un. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un is heavily guarded as he feels his life is at risk all the time. He needs to be protected or be a target from all sides. Part of the reason for this is his very controversial actions over the years, including the treatment of neighbor South Korea and his attempts to make the country a nuclear power. It's true that Kim Jong Un has taken steps to make peace, including meeting with the leader of South Korea and even meeting Donald Trump at a peace summit. But to some people, they don't think it's enough. Thus, ruler Kim Jong Un has done very well in making his home of the royal family of North Korea very secure. For Ryong-song residents is nearly impenetrable. Let's start with the outside. There's an electric fence surrounding the whole place, armed guards positioned strategically around it, and then there's a minefield, which is something most people wouldn't even dare to cross. The walls of the residence are built to last as well, and not just random strikes, but full-on nuclear blasts. But should something happen to cause the family of Kim Jong Un to flee, they're covered, for the property is built on secret tunnels that will lead them to various other safe houses. There's also apparently gas that will be released if someone breaches security and somehow makes it onto the grounds. Whether you respect Kim Jong Un or not, you should acknowledge he knows how to keep himself safe, which also applies to how he handles his country in terms of what the people can do. The laws in North Korea restrict heavily what the citizens can have and can do with with their money and free time, including which areas of the country even have electricity. Many feel this is Kim Jong Un stacking the deck to ensure his safety and that no one can reach him. And now for number 6. But first, be sure to subscribe to World List if you haven't already. Number 6. Recep Tayyip Erdogan. In the case of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, president of Turkey, he's not a man who is technically under imminent threat of danger despite certain people not liking him or his politics. That being said, he is someone who has one of the most loyal and hardcore detail of bodyguards in the world, and thus makes him one of the most protected people on the planet itself. So how is that possible? That would be because of a group known as the Mustachiers, who's a group of 60 men who are pledged to protect and serve Erdogan, and they do so with distinction and sometimes extreme force. If you're curious, yes, the Mustachiers, as they're called, are men with great big mustaches, which is the way the president looks, so they very much modeled their looks after him. And that says nothing of all the times they have truly looked after him, because the Mustachiers are infamous for their brutal attacks on people who they feel are threatening their boss, or are insulting him in some grand way. A great example of this happened back in 2017, when the president was visiting the United States to meet with the Secretary of State, and in the process got met by protesters. When those protesters arrived, the Mustachiers quite literally beat them down, so much so that they were charged with assault. The charges were later dropped though. As if that wasn't enough, during a trip to Greece, the Turkish president was protected by his 60-man bodyguard team, over 100 Turkish officials, and 3,000 Greek snipers to make sure he was safe. Number 5. Shinzo Abe. You might not think that the leader of Japan, one of the most advanced and popular nations in the world, would need a large security detail. Especially since Shinzo Abe, the current leader of Japan, is one of the most composed leaders in the world today. However, that is untrue. If anything, the opposite is true, because Shinzo Abe not only has a large security detail, he's a man who sometimes has a 9,000-person security detail when he decides he needs to go outside of his own country. He's so well protected that when he decided to go visit a war shrine dedicated to the fallen of Japan from World War II, he had his security with him as well, which was appropriate because that very action of going to the shrine was seen as a red flag by China and North Korea, though Abe was very sagely about the entire affair. Japan must never wage war again, Mr. Abe said. This is my conviction based on severe remorse for the past. It is not my intention at all to hurt the feelings of the Chinese and Korean people. In many ways, this is the kind of leader you would protect with all you've got, because that wisdom and desire to do more is oftentimes very rare in world leaders. Going back to his security detail, they're known to go all out to help Shinzo Abe, even if it's doing something as simple as getting into another lane of traffic, in which case the bodyguards will lean out of their cars via the windows of the ride, stick themselves halfway out, and politely ask and motion other cars to move out of the way. Number 4. Xi Jinping. The man who governs over China right now is named Xi Jinping, and he has many titles that help prove he's the leader, including General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, President of the People's Republic of China, and Chairman of the Central Military Commission. He's been in power since 2012 and has helped secure Communist China as one of the most powerful and dangerous nations in the world today. Because of his beliefs and the fact that he rules over one of the biggest countries on Earth, he does indeed have a large security force at his beck and call. First and foremost is the Central Security Bureau, a task force and secret service that is at the service of Xi Jinping as well as many of the high-ranking members of the Communist Party in China, which is almost literally all we know about this group outside of its leader, His Excellency Wang Shaojun, who has been seen in public on camera exactly once in 2015 during a White House banquet. The group is known for their secrecy, and they've stopped many coup attempts against Xi Jinping. Beyond that, his influence and power prove the lengths he goes to keep himself and others close to him safe, such as when he did a visit to Hong Kong and instituted a security blanket over the entire city, to the extent that various parts of Hong Kong were shut down while he was there. 11,000 police officers used various means to keep protesters back, and even had helicopters patrolling the area to ensure that nothing happened to him. Number 3. Queen Elizabeth II. God save the Queen. In this case, literally in regards to Queen Elizabeth II. Thankfully for her, her home is well protected. and has been throughout her tenure as Queen of England. Buckingham Palace is a popular tourist destination, but don't let that fool you. This palace is guarded very well. There have been tests of that security, sure, but none of it has reached the Queen of England. The place is surrounded by guards, each of them unwavering in their dedication to making sure the Queen is safe, as well as the various other people that live in Buckingham Palace. In fact, at night, the guards do a special ringing task that makes sure that none of them will fall asleep accidentally. That's the kind of thing that's only done to ensure their charge, in this case the Queen of England, is protected at all times. Also, the roads outside the building are closed when visiting hours arrive, and the police are brought in during those hours to ensure that nothing goes wrong. So that's two different forces of men focused on making sure you don't get in. And it may seem like it's maybe not the most robust of security, but it gets the job done, and does that job with distinction. The Queen and her family have been kept safe there for a very, very long time, and that doesn't look to change anytime soon. While it may feel like this is a lot of protection for a woman whose power has waned in recent years and decades, you must remember that the symbol of the Queen is still very powerful amongst the people. Plus, like any country, the news of a fallen monarch would be very tragic and detrimental to the country. Not to mention it would make many on the ground level of the country feel unsafe. Thus, between the royal guards and all other manners of security, the Queen will be kept safe. And while there have been plots and assassination attempts to kill the Queen, including the infamous Lithgow Plot, none have succeeded. Number 2. El Chapo. Sometimes the most protected people on the planet aren't the ones you want to keep safe per se, but rather the ones you want to make sure don't cause trouble for the world at large, including the man known as El Chapo. And that nickname might mean Shorty, but that didn't stop him from becoming one of the most powerful and richest men in the world, as well as starting one of the deadliest wars in Mexico's history just to make himself richer and his business bigger. He was the head of the Sinaloa cartel, which was the cartel that brought things like cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamine, and heroin over the border and into the States. It was here that he started to make his millions, because he helped craft a plethora of elaborate and clever ways to get them across the border without getting caught, including using submarines, tunnels, and more. This made him a billionaire over time, and his cartel was one of the most lucrative and powerful in the world. El Chapo has been caught many times, but in multiple cases he's escaped, including spending $2 million to bribe over 70 people so he could escape a prison. Eventually he was caught and brought to the US, where he was held in a maximum security prison, ADX Florence. Given his wealth and influence, guards make sure that he is watched and isn't influencing anyone, else he escape again. Number 1. The Pope. The idea of a prominent religious leader being protected should not seem odd. However, when it comes to the Pope, regardless of which man is holding the title, the lengths they go to protect this religious leader can sometimes be viewed as extreme. For example, the Pope has his own personal bodyguards that are specifically trained to protect him in the form of the Pontifical Swiss Guard. That is, after going through a rigorous process to make sure they're ready to protect the Pope. Any Swiss ex-military man of good standing who's Catholic, under 30, over 5'8", and has a diploma can apply for the role. And if they're accepted, training in many aspects begins for them. They're one of the most technologically advanced units in the world today, and they're dedicated to the Pope completely. As if that weren't enough protection for the Pope, he has his own special vehicle called the Pope-mobile. This long white car is able to let him stand out of the top and wave at the people, usually from within a large bulletproof glass extension, though there are times he just prefers to be out in the open to see the people. Either way, he's protected from all angles, arguably from above also via a certain deity watching over him. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these people who are protected more than anyone else in the world? Are you surprised by some of the people that have made the list? Which person or world leader did you expect to see but didn't? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to World List before you leave, and I'll see you next time.